welcome back to the Sensible Mama podcast. I am Paulina Westcott, your host. Before we get started, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel and share it with somebody that you think may enjoy it. Joining me today is Ann Morris. She is a doula. She's a birth and postpartum doula serving the Atlanta, Georgia area. Ann, welcome to the podcast. I'm very happy to have you here.
Thank you for having me. I'm super excited to chat with you today.
Yeah, me too. So we thought it would be wise to dive into your birth stories. I love hearing birth stories, especially from the perspective of a doula who knows a lot about birth. I feel like there's a lot to learn and no two births are the same. You've had three, so I'm excited to hear what they were like and how they were different, what you learned and all that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, with my first, I was not a doula. And so, yeah, my first time being pregnant, I was very naive about a lot of things. I actually have had a fun fact, all three of my children were born in different states. So, that's kind of cool. So, my first, I was living in New York City at the time. I literally, got a positive pregnancy test and did what I thought everybody does. And I just went on Google and found a care provider close by me, one that took my insurance. I just went to a traditional OBGYN. Thankfully, I had a super low risk pregnancy. I was 23 at the time when I was first pregnant. I had a very, very smooth pregnancy overall. And it was around, I want to say, 34 or 35 weeks that I was a teacher at the time. And so one of my coworkers had asked me, if I had done any preparing for birth. And I was like, I did all the, online Googling, I read, blogs and articles and maybe listened to some birth story podcasts and things like that. But I hadn't taken a traditional class or anything yet. And she had actually referred me to the one that she had done during her pregnancy. And so I ended up getting the last seat in that class with my husband. It was an in-person class. And it was at that class, actually, Polina, that I found out what doulas are for the first time ever.
Honestly, I
And
think that I was the same thing. It was my friend recommended a doula-led childbirth education class with my first pregnancy that was also supposed to be at a hospital, and I was like, doula? A doula? What's a doula?
yeah, I had never heard of this before. And when the teacher started speaking about doulas, I was like, oh, that's what I need. I need one of those because I had wanted to go into birth, having as minimal interventions as possible. I wanted to try to go unmedicated. And so when I heard about what doulas do, I was like, okay, yes, I think I need one of those. And so thankfully, I was able to, at the very last minute, super late in my pregnancy, I was able to hire a doula, and she was great. It was really, really helpful to have her on our team. And so kind of to, get into my birth, it was actually the day before my due date is when I went into labor, and then I ended up having my son on his actual due date. So that's kind of cool. It's very
That's
rare
very
to
rare.
actually
That's what, like
have your
5%
baby.
of births or something like that?
Something like that. Yeah, it's very, very low statistic. So anyways, yeah, so it was probably around 9 or 10 p.m. in the evening. And I started to feel, some cramping. And my labor, I was anticipating, I was a first time mom. You hear all the stories, it could be a long, drawn out process because, for first time moms, it tends to go slow. And so I was kind of in that headspace, right? I was like, okay, maybe this is the start of something. And so, I heard, you're supposed to, rest and relax, especially if it's nighttime. And so I did that. I laid in bed, and I quickly realized I wasn't going to be able to lay in bed because that was super uncomfortable. So I started doing some position changes. The contractions were, pretty consistently, maybe every 7 to 10 minutes for that first hour. And so after that first hour, I decided to call my doula and inform her that I was having contractions, but they were really manageable, and I was just kind of changing positions in between resting. And then after about that second hour, I knew that I wasn't going to be able to probably do what I was doing much longer. Like I was realizing that they were getting more intense. And so I decided to go utilize the water because I heard that like water was very helpful during labor. So I labored in the shower, and that was super helpful. I was so thankful to have like that nice hot water on my back. I remember I like listened to like worship music when I was in there, so I made like a little like serene atmosphere. And yeah, my husband was there with me. It was really really nice. And my doula was like still on the phone. And then I would say probably around like 3 a.m. is when I started to notice like a shift, and still on the phone with my doula, and she was like, do you want me to like head to you? And I was like, no, I feel like it's like too soon, because I mean, you don't know what you don't know, right?
Especially with
Like
the
I mean,
first time, like you're like, this is it. No, wait, that's not it. No, this is totally manageable. But wait, is it real? I don't know. Like literally, you have nothing to compare to.
exactly. I had nothing to compare it to, and I mean, I think now after having three babies like unmedicated, I think I do have like a higher pain tolerance, but I will say like I had no sense of like what was happening. So anyways, it was around 3 a.m. and I started to feel like a pressure filled sensation. And like, I couldn't really, it's hard to describe, but like, I could feel something and I didn't know what it was. And that kind of freaked me out. And now, obviously, in hindsight, I know that it was like a bulging bag of water. But in the moment, it freaked me out. And I could have swore it was like my baby's head, right? And so I like have a moment of panic. And mind you, we're living in New York City at the time. And so, if you don't know, when you live in New York City, typically people don't have cars. Thankfully, we do have a car. It's parked like down the street though, and so we live in a third story walk up. I'm like imagining like walking down 3 flights of stairs, then walking to our car. I'm like, yeah, no, that's not going to work for me. So I told my husband, you need to call an ambulance, and we need to get to the hospital via ambulance because there's no way I can walk like at this point. And so he was like, are you sure? And I was like, yes, I'm like totally sure. So here proceeds to come a few strange people that I've never met in my life, knowing in
Yeah.
my head, okay, strange people in the environment could slow my labor down. Great, that's hopefully not going to be the case for me. Hopefully, I'm far enough along that that's not going to happen. But anyway, here they come. I go to the hospital in the ambulance with my husband, and I get there and I'm told I'm 10 centimeters dilated, ready to push. So I was clearly like in transition. Um, my doula made it to the hospital. She ended up meeting us there. And yeah, basically it was like, Anne, are you ready to like meet your baby? And I was like, okay. It's just wild. Like this is a wild story. And so I remember like my doula was like right there, like she was getting me like cold compresses for like my forehead, which was like super amazing. She had been like coaching me over the phone too, which was super helpful. And yeah, my husband was there, and literally within 3 contractions, 3 pushes, like my son was out.
What? That's
I yeah, it was crazy.
beautiful.
It was like something out of a movie though. Like it was wild. Um, and so I ended up having a second-degree tear. I pushed on my back, and I
Mm,
pushed way too hard. I didn't know about like, waiting for like your body to like labor down. I basically just like pushed with all my might.
mm.
Hence the second-degree tearing. And so, I didn't know in the moment, but now looking back, like I wish that that could have played out differently. But my recovery was pretty smooth overall. Breastfeeding was really hard with my first son. I hadn't really set myself up for success with breastfeeding, to be honest with you. I was again very naive with my first, thinking, oh, this is such a natural thing, and
Mhm.
everybody does it, and not knowing just like how difficult it can be for some women. And so, yeah, I ended up exclusively pumping because it just gave me a lot of peace to know that like I could see the amount that he was getting. And
Sure.
so,
Yeah.
yeah, hey, that's considered breastfeeding. So if you're an exclusive pumper and you're listening to this, like props to you because it's a ton of work.
Listen,
I can,
seriously, like I consider so breastfeeding, yes, it is not necessarily easy for everybody. But there is something to be said for once you get it down, the convenience and the lack of effort that it takes. You don't have to worry about washing things or, having parts ready or getting up at certain times or making sure like you literally just whip out your boob and put your baby on it.
yeah.
If you're able to do that, it's so convenient and so easy. So I listen to like people who exclusively pump. I'm like, as if postpartum isn't already hectic enough and demanding enough, now you also are doing that. Like, moms are super, super human. It's nuts.
I know. It's so true. And yeah, so I ended up exclusively pumping, and I ended up having to supplement him starting around maybe like 5 months just because he was just having a growth spurt, and unfortunately like my milk supply just like wasn't cutting it anymore. But I ended up stopping around 7 or 8 months. So I was proud of myself for that. I mean,
Yeah.
I gave it my best shot. But yeah, that was my first birth in a
That's pretty
nutshell.
impressive for a first, like, I mean, you said you were not prepared, but for somebody who was, self-proclaimed unprepared, that sounds pretty wonderful. I mean, labor is hard. Birth is not a walk in the park no matter what, but like to get to the hospital at 10 centimeters and ready to push, that's like everybody's dream, right? Like no
Yeah,
medical
it wasn't it,
interventions, no time to have talk about what possible interventions could there be, right? Like it's just go time.
yeah. I
That's
mean, I will
awesome.
tell you this. It wasn't on purpose. I was not intending on that happening. Start to finish, my labor was like 7 hours with my first. Yeah, so it started around like, like I said, like 9:30, 10, and he was born, I think, at 5:06 a.m. So like it was just a whirlwind. But yeah, I mean, overall, a very positive experience. I mean, the ambulance was like a little dramatic, but
Mm.
like, I mean, I did what I had to do in the moment.
No, but the thing is
Um,
also like you know you, and if you don't think you're going to make it down the stairs and down the street, then probably if that's what your instincts are telling you, you're probably right.
yeah, yeah. So anyway, it makes for a fun story to tell.
Yeah.
So now fast forward to 2021. I get pregnant with our second son. And now, between the time that my first son is born and my second son is born, I become a doula. And
Mm.
so, between that time, I probably attend around 40 births or so. And I really get firsthand insight into all the different ways that birth can go, right? So, home birth, hospital birth, birth center, C-sections, inductions, physiological birth, you name it. I had a front row seat to it all. And so that was really fun. And I was able to really just like see, the type of birth that like I felt the most drawn to. And so, after attending some home births, I was like, wow, like for if we have another child, which I was hoping we would, I would love to have a home birth with my second. So, so ended up, finding a midwifery practice that like I really loved and connected with, and ended up, attending a few births with them during my time as a doula. And so I knew like when I got that positive pregnancy test again that I'd be calling them. And so, yeah, I ended up, hiring a home birth midwife team, and this was down in Florida. So my
Okay.
first was born in New York, second is in Florida. And yeah, so again, had a very thankfully, textbook pregnancy, very minimal, things to complain about, honestly. I mean, I dealt with some food aversions with all three of my pregnancies during that first trimester. It's just like what I deal with, and that's fine. Like,
Yeah.
I feel like I get so blessed in regards to that because I hear about, these horrible stories about women just getting sick all the time, and that thankfully just like isn't my story. I don't know. I guess, I, God's with me. I don't know. I feel so thankful that, I just deal with some minor food aversions. But with my second pregnancy, I will tell you this, my care was just so personalized, and my home birth midwife appointments were very, very, very different than the appointments that I had with my first.
Can we talk about that for a second? We're gonna just because so I started. People who've listened to my podcast are probably sick of hearing my birth story, but sorry guys. Um, I started. I was gonna have my baby at Yale Hospital. You know, ooh, Yale is wonderful and so forth. And then at 8 months pregnant, I was like over the medicalization and the feeling like I was ill every time I went to the OB and being whatever. It was like a whole thing. I have a blog about it. I can link it in the description so people can read the whole story if they want. But I was 8 months pregnant and I was like, I'm over this. We're doing a home birth. Let's do this. And this is my first kid.
Wow.
So I had a couple of visits with my midwife. I mean, I was 8 months pregnant. There's only so much you can fit into the last month of care, you know. But immediately from the very first phone call, I was like, oh, wow. Like with the OB, you walk in, you sign in, you pee in a cup, you get your blood pressure checked. You know, they poke and prod you sometimes. They ask if you have any questions, and then you go. And it's like, okay. And then you come to the third trimester, and it's like, okay, now you have to do this test, and now you have to do that test, and now you have to do this test, and now you have to do that test. And the whole way, it like felt like a conveyor belt of just like you're checking off boxes on my sheet, right? At least that's how I felt. I'm,
Yeah.
I assume that's how it is fairly standardly across the board. With a midwife, specifically home birth midwives, it's just like the appointments are an hour long easily.
Mhm.
And it's an
Mhm.
hour of discussion and education and getting to know you and your concerns, your fears, your strengths, your wishes. How do you picture your birth going? What happens if that happens? Like who's going to be there? Like it was so much more human. And I'm like until you've experienced the other, you just assume that the OB, you know, procedure is just how it always is. And you don't know how much more personal, like you said, it's so personal. And it's, anyway, I wanted to put a plug in for home birth midwives all over the place because it is not the same.
Yeah. No, it's definitely so different, and I wish every like mom could honestly experience it. And I know home birth's not for every mom, so obviously like that's not always, doable, but um yeah, my experience is just so special, and I'm just so grateful to have like been able to experience it. So like you said, like my appointments were like an hour long. I looked forward to them. My husband would come with me to every single appointment. I was able to bring my son with me because they had like toys in the waiting room, and it was actually encouraged for me to bring him, so he could like start to feel comfortable with her if he was around and awake, during the home birth.
Yeah.
He would already be familiar with like who they were, and so yeah, I so enjoyed like that process. And preparing for birth looked a little bit different the second time around, just because like I had learned so much and knew the things that I could be doing to like help support my body. I was a little bit older the second time around, so I was like, okay, I should probably be like doing more things. And so I ended up seeing a Webster certified chiropractor throughout my pregnancy the second time around, which was amazing. I kind of did it like preemptively. I wasn't somebody that like dealt with like aches and pains or anything like that during pregnancy, but I knew that it had positive like ramifications for birth, and so that's why I did it. And yeah, I definitely like so appreciated having her in my corner, to like help me with preparing. I also worked with like a lactation group during the pregnancy, knowing that I was bound and determined to make breastfeeding work the second time around, because I had helped so many mothers, through that process during my time as a doula, and knew it was possible to have a successful breastfeeding journey as long as you prepared for it and worked for it. And so had that ready to go, and also had like heard about like tongue and lip ties
Mm-hmm.
being like sometimes a barrier to breastfeeding, and so like I also like prepared for that too in the event like my son or daughter, we didn't know what we were having with our second, in the event they were dealing with that, I knew who I would call and who I would reach out to in order to get support in that area. So I had like a lot more preparation, that second time around. And yeah, I hired a birth photographer for my birth, so that was kind of cool. Like I said, I was like working in the space, and so I didn't really have any photos from my first birth at all, or any video or anything like that. And so I just felt like that would be like a way to really, make it special and capture some of the, intimate moments. And so she was an amazing aspect of my birth team, not only just because of the amazing quality of photos that she took, but also because of her warm presence. So, and I'll get to that as I get to my birth story. But anyway, I just wanted to share a little bit about like what like my prep like kind of looked for my
I
second,
love
just
that. I
because
mean, yeah,
I didn't have any.
no, from a doula's perspective, like what does a doula do to prepare for her own birth? Like that tells you everything, right? Like we recommend things and we say you should do this and you should do that, but what does it look like when we're preparing for our own births? Like that's very telling for what do we consider the most important things. So I appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah, yeah, totally. Oh, and I had also I wanted to have a water birth for the second time around, just because, like I said, I loved using water with my first labor, and so I was planning on utilizing water again with my second. First the shower, like during labor, and then like once it got time to like starting to push to get into like the actual tub. So we around 36 or 37 weeks, we had like a home visit with the midwife, so they like came to the house and brought the birth pool then. And so, we had like kind of blown it up and just made sure there was like no holes in it or anything like that. And kind of had that waiting, ready to go. Because I'd heard that when I'd also witnessed as a doula, moms who wanted to have a water birth but weren't able to get their water birth just because like their births just kind of like went so fast and like things were just happening so quickly. There you go.
With my
Yeah.
second.
Yes,
Yep.
it's just one of those things. And so I'm so glad that we did that because actually my husband in that process realized that like the piece like that connected like the tub to like the hose or like the hose to like the shower like
Mm-hmm.
wasn't the right piece. So he had to like go to the store to like get the right piece. And I'm so glad that we did that while I was still pregnant and not during labor because I wouldn't have got my water birth if he wouldn't have done that. So I recommend doing that if you're considering having a water birth to just like kind of set everything up and make sure everything's good to go ahead of time. But anyway, so kind of like fast forward then to when I went into labor. So I was 39. No, let me think. Hang on. Sorry. Okay, yeah, around 39 weeks, I had my 39-week checkup with my midwife. And I remember her like touching my belly and being like, okay, like your baby's like not quite engaged yet. So here's a few things you can do to like, encourage your baby to like engage in your pelvis. And I was like, okay, cool. And so I went to my chiropractor and like she gave me a few like recommendations for that as well. And so I was doing those things at home. And then I ended up going to my 40-week appointment. I think my son was born, I'm trying to remember his due date. Yeah, he was born at like 40 and 1. So like I like had my babies like right on time,
Yeah,
which is great.
same.
Um so yeah, I went to my 40-week appointment and I remember she like touched my belly again and she was like, "Oh, yeah, this feels like much better." So like obviously like he had engaged during that past week. And also like that morning that I went to that appointment, I remember I woke up with like a little bit of like my mucus plug like in the toilet. And so that I remember that had happened with my first, like about 24 hours before he was born. And so I reached out to my birth photographer that day, and I was like, "Hey, like just want to let you know, it could be like in the next day or so." And I was like starting to feel crampy, and so I was like, "Okay." I told my husband, I was like, "I think this is like starting, like albeit slowly, but I think things are happening." And so I remember my midwife, before I left that 40-week appointment, she was like, "Listen, though, you can't go before this other mom goes because she's 41 and like 6 or 5." And I was like, "Okay, yeah, no worries. Like, we'll let her go first and then like it'll be my turn." Joke's on me. So I'm,
Situations where people are like, okay, so just like wait to go into labor. You're like, I'll get right on that. Like, sure.
yeah. Um, so yeah, I continued throughout my day. I remember I like went, it's so funny because like between like my first birth experience and my second birth experience, it is like so different because like I feel like when it's your second, you kind of like know, like you kind of have like muscle memory. You're like, okay, like we've done this before. Like I know what this is. And my second experience, I feel like was better because like there was like a little bit more of like a build up to it. And so I like went throughout my day. I remember I like went, I was like doing some like errands and then I went home and I was like bouncing on my ball and I was having contractions, but they were like super sporadic and inconsistent. And I told my husband, I was like, I think things are going to be happening like, maybe tonight or like tomorrow morning. And he was like, okay, like let's go to dinner like one last time, like the three of us. And so I was like, okay, cool. So we ended up doing that. And I remember like when we were at dinner, I was like starting to have to kind of like breathe through them. And I was like, yeah, things are happening. They'll probably like ramp up when we get home and I feel like safe, in my safe space. And so we like went home. He put our son to bed, and it was around like 8 o'clock. And I kind of like went into our room. We lived in like a tiny like 2-bedroom apartment at the time. And so like he put our son to bed in his bedroom, and then like I went into ours and like had like our little birth cave that we had created with like the pool, and like we had our the shower like ready to go for like me to labor in, and I had like my twinkly lights hung up and like birth affirmations and all that. I used like Christian hypnobirthing. I don't. Are you familiar with that
Yeah,
at all?
I have opinions on the subject of hypnobirthing, but I know it works for some people. I agree with most of what's in the philosophy. Anyway,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's like the Christian version, so it's not like woo woo. It's like really beautiful. She like says like positive affirmations and like scriptures using like tracks. And so it was just really beautiful to like have on the background. And so yeah, I was able to like start to like, really like get into the zone. And I think I was like still in denial, but like it was around 9 o'clock. My husband was like, I think we should call the midwife just to like kind of let her know, like give her a heads up. I was like, okay, sure, you can let her know. Contractions were definitely getting like more intense, but they were still kind of like, they were still pretty manageable. And so he calls the birth team. She was like, okay, like had him on speaker, or I was on speakerphone with her, and she was like, do you want us to come now? And I was like, no, it's okay, I think we're good, like you still have time. She's like, okay. And so like 2 contractions later, my husband was like, I think we need to have them come. And I was like, okay, because I was having contractions like right after that like I felt like we're like 2 minutes long. I was like, these contractions are like not ending. And
It's
so he
really
like
funny.
called.
Sorry to interrupt. It's just really hilarious the parallels with my second birth. I was also completely in denial. I had a 23-hour birth the first time, so I was expecting like 12 hours the next. It's ended up being 7, and so like I was like 4 or 5 hours in, and I'm like, I'm fine. I have so much longer to go. My husband's like, you sound a lot like you did at the end of your first.
Wow.
Maybe I should call the midwife. I'm like, you could call her. I'm fine.
We're so funny. Like I don't, yeah, it's just really funny. Because when you get into like that labor land, it's just like so hard to like make decisions like that. I don't
Yeah,
know.
because
I
you're just
just
like in your own little world and you're like just doing your thing. I was taking a shower and like shaving my legs. My husband's like, "You're crazy," and I'm like, "I need to shave my legs.
yeah,
Now I need to clip my toenails. Like this is important right now." And he's
priorities.
like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "It's fine. We have so much time." And he's like, "I really don't. It's your you know better than I do, I think." And I'm like, anyway, he was right and I was wrong. Don't tell him I said that, but yeah,
No, that's funny. I mean, I'm super glad I like listened to my
yeah,
husband
same.
in regards to like calling them again. So, unbeknownst to me, like the birth photographer and the midwife assistant, like they were all getting ready like after that first call anyway. And so it's not like they were like taken by surprise,
Yeah,
They were like, okay, she's a second time mom. Like we gotta like, start to prepare to go.
right.
So, birth photographer arrived first around like 10 p.m. or so. And it was so nice to have like a female presence in the room just because like I hadn't had that before because like my doula was like on the phone and she met us at the hospital. And just like when she entered the room, it was like, oh my gosh, like it was so powerful, like that female energy. I don't know how else to describe it. It was just like really, really like amazing. And she just like encouraged me and she told me I was like doing such a good job. She was like, you were so beautiful. Like just, so much like positive like affirmations and just her presence was just everything. So I so appreciated her being there. And then the birth assistant arrived and then the midwife arrived. So everybody was there by like 10:30. And so at that point I was like definitely like starting to like struggle. Like it was getting harder and harder to manage. And so at one point I think somebody said, or no, I said like I need to be in the water. And so they started to prepare the birth pool. For whatever reason, I don't think I ended up laboring in the shower for my second. Yeah, I didn't labor in the shower. I don't know why. I was really liking being on the ball, and just like swaying back and forth, and like doing like the slow dancing position with like my
Mm-hmm.
husband, like being like upright. So just like listening to my body intuitively. And so I got into the tub, and within like 5 minutes of me being in the tub, my water broke. And that was like a crazy sensation because I don't remember feeling that with my first. But it obviously like relaxed me enough to like allow my body to open more, which was like amazing. And I was so happy that it happened in the tub. That was a really cool experience. And then my body like definitely started like involuntarily pushing after that. And so I was definitely like the pool was pretty big, and so I like was kind of having a hard time like grounding myself. And so my midwife kind of noticed that, and she recommended my husband get in with me. And we hadn't really talked about that prior, but he like jumped right in. He was like happy to help and just put on some board shorts really quick and got in with me. And I was able to I started in hands and knees, and I wasn't feeling that position, and so I then like kind of like leaned into him. He like was, leaning against the tub, and then I was like leaning in front of him. And yeah, I just kind of like let my body like do its thing. I really, really wanted to avoid tearing the second time around, and I like told myself like the best way to do that is to really just like labor down and like of course like push when you feel led to, but just you know follow your body's lead and just take it like slow and not push like when you don't feel like you have to yet. And so I did that. And I remember like yeah, it was about an hour of just kind of like laboring down and like listening to my body. And then I remember like at one point like I was pushing, and the midwife assistant was like head is out, and I was like oh my gosh, thank God. And then like with the next contraction like the rest of his body was born. And I can't remember who announced the gender, but we didn't know the gender. And so we, figured out it was a boy. So that was fun. And then I got out of the tub to birth the placenta. And thankfully, there were no complications with that. And it was just amazing. I mean, just being able to like be in my own space and like, be able to have my baby like in my own bed. It was amazing. So he ended up being born around like 12:30. And so yeah, my labor, like I said, was definitely different. I can't really like measure like because early labor I felt like was big throughout the day. It was like a slower buildup, but then once things like kicked into gear, I'd say it was like about 5 hours of like active labor.
Nice.
So
It
like eight
sounds
to like
so beautiful.
12:30. Yeah, it was really nice and peaceful. And we really wanted to create like such a calm and like warm environment. And it was really, really wonderful. Like, and I was so thankful I was able to have him in the tub, because I had also heard, that having your baby in water can help prevent tearing too. And like I said, I really wanted to help prevent that as much as possible. And thankfully, she said I had like a skit, like I don't know what the right terminology was. I didn't really tear, but it was just like a tiny like abrasion or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah.
So like I was like thrilled over the moon. Yeah, I was able to like breastfeed right away. Breastfeeding was hard. It took us a solid like 3 or 4 weeks to like really get into a good flow with it. And I had like mentally prepared for that. And so I ended up utilizing all of those resources that I mentioned to you that I had like prepared ahead of time. Like I used the lactation consultant. They came over multiple times. I used the chiropractor. He did have like a little bit of like, I believe it was, I can't remember if it was a tongue or a lip tie, but like they advised somebody, I had somebody look at him and they advised I like get it revised. And then I had another consultation with someone else, and they said with like body work and doing like just like some external things, like they thought like he wouldn't need it to be revised. And so after like praying about it with my husband, we ultimately decided that we weren't going to get it revised, but we were going to just do all the things to like support him and his body.
Mhm.
And so I'm really glad that we didn't, because he ended up doing great with like cranial sacral therapy and the lactation support, and we did like that like myofascial like massage
Mm.
and just like all the things. But yeah, so that was my second. Quite different from my first, but
That sounds so beautiful. I love hearing these kinds of birth stories because, like, there's nothing wildly dramatic, there's nothing like chaotic, and it's just a beautiful. I mean, not that it's not work. Again, labor is labor. It's hard at work, and it's, one of the most intense things a woman can go through,
oh yeah,
also can be so blissfully serene and beautiful and powerful, and you just gotta let it be, you know, the way it's gonna be. And I love the way that you mentioned throughout the process you were in tune with your body and you were listening to what your body was telling you to do. And if it says, this is another thing, like you may have a birth plan where you're like, I'm gonna labor in the shower. And then come time for labor, your body's like, nope, we're gonna do something else. You need to be lying on your side, or you should be on the birth ball, or you should be dancing with your husband, or whatever.
yeah,
And it's this beautiful thing where, like, I always encourage people, you should absolutely write a birth plan. Like, write out what your ideal birth looks like by all means, but then have a little footnote mentally, for yourself that when it comes time to labor, listen to what your body says and just go with the flow and trust your intuition in both the good and the bad. And it extends to postpartum and motherhood and pregnancy. Honestly, all of life is like, even with the oral tie, the lip tie, like, okay, so you get a professional telling you one thing, listen to your gut. If your gut's telling you, I need a second opinion, I don't know that I'm convinced, go get a second opinion. And if you're still not convinced, go find research. And if somebody's like, this is the only way for you to, resolve this issue, and you're like, I feel like there might be something else, go find out. Nowadays, there's so many resources between, Facebook groups and websites and, networking and other moms and stuff. Like, talk to people, find out, what did you do, have you heard of any alternatives? And if somebody said something completely out there in left field, you're like, I don't know, could be worth looking into, so look into it. There's just so much room for breaking the mold, which sounds so cliche. It's kind of stupid to even say that, like, there's this like mold of what we expect a pregnancy and a labor to look like, and having a baby and postpartum and breastfeeding, that we forget to take into account that everybody's journey is going to look completely different, and you have so many options. No matter what your situation is, you have so many options available to you always.
totally. Yeah. I love what you said about like creating a birth plan, because like that's literally like exactly what I tell all my clients. I always recommend you create a birth plan, but I always tell them too, like you can always change your mind during birth. Like because you can plan for birth, but you cannot plan the actual thing. So
Yes.
like when the day comes, like you don't know like what you're going to like and what you're not going to like. So we can
Yes.
practice all the positions, we can practice all the comfort measures and types of massage and things like that, but like on the day of, like you might not want me to touch you like at all,
That's
and so we
okay.
we might have to pivot, and so we might have to just use like verbal encouragement, versus like those physical comfort measures that we practice, and that's okay, because birth is just unpredictable. So yeah,
100%.
I love what
And
you said.
it's not a failure if you deviate from your birth plan. Like, even
No.
in the worst case scenario, like let's say you plan a home birth totally, uninterrupted by anybody, nobody there, nothing medical, you just want to be all by yourself and catch your baby, and then you end up day of deciding to go into the hospital and getting a C-section. Guess what? That's not a failure. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, so long as you get to your decisions through things like education and informed consent, and you have people supporting you, I think that's really, really important. Like, have people advocating for you, and make sure you are the one that is steering the ship. But if your ship is going toward an iceberg, you better steer it away from the iceberg, and that's a good thing. That's what you should do. You know what I mean? So, like, there is a time and a place for you to just completely shred your birth plan and make a new birth plan on the fly, like you said, like change it day of. That's okay. You haven't failed.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that.
Yeah. All right. So that was baby number two. So now baby
Yeah.
number three.
Baby number three. Okay. So we didn't find out the gender for a third as well. This time around, it's so funny because like I totally thought my second was a girl because like my pregnancy symptoms were like a little bit different for him. And so when he was born, I was like, oh, well, there go all those like motherly intuitive intuition that I had, because like I was so wrong. So this third time around, I was like, I could basically like convince myself that like I was wrong, like whatever I thought it was. So like I had no idea, like literally had no idea. Either way. And so ended up we wanted to have a home birth, but unfortunately just that wasn't in the cards for us the third time around. And so like the next second best thing to that in our area, now we're in Georgia, so third baby was born in Georgia. Second like best runner up to that was having a water birth like in the hospital setting. And so I was with a group that offered that, which is incredible actually. Like the fact that this area even like offers that I think is amazing because that's actually not like super widespread to be able to have a water birth in the hospital. So
Yeah.
that's the group that I was with. And so that knowing that though, that hospital was about like 40 minutes away from us. And so, I kind of like had to like take that into account when making my decisions. But ultimately I was like, you know what, like I think it'll be okay. We'll just make it work. Because I just knew like what a positive, experience that I had with my second in the water. And so let's see. Yeah, again, like pretty textbook pregnancy. You know, Around 36 weeks, they noticed that like the baby was like measuring a little bit on the smaller side. And so, of course, like my like doula brain, like I'm like, oh gosh, like, here we go. Like, they're gonna start like recommending interventions and stuff because it was like a hospital-based group, and so it wasn't like, that typical like, home birth midwife group that I would, gotten so accustomed to with my second.
Mm.
Um, and so they really wanted me to have like an ultrasound at like 39 weeks. And I just like really prayed about it. And I was like, you know what? I just don't like feel like that's necessary. I had one at like 33 or 34 weeks. And, I just also know that like ultrasound is like not risk free. And so I tried to like limit like the number of ultrasounds that I have throughout my pregnancy. I didn't have any with my second. And, everything was totally fine. But yeah, so I actually opted to not have that ultrasound that they recommended I have. And I had my 39-week appointment and, everything was fine, but baby was still measuring like a little bit on the smaller side when they did like the like fundal height. Like the baby, I guess, like hadn't like grown a ton since like my last check the week before. And so, again, that was kind of like putting like some like red flags on their end. But again, like intuitively, I just like, I knew everything was fine. Like I just knew everything was fine. And so, I was 39 and 1, and with my first two births, I guess my water broke like at the very end with my first. I don't even remember when that happened. My second, it happened at the very end. Well, 39 and 1, I have a very long day. It's Christmas time. We like went for like Christmas caroling in like a neighborhood nearby. We went to a friend's birthday party for her 1-year-old. We get home. It's like 11 o'clock at night, and my husband and I, we always like spend time together before we go to bed. And I remember we pray like after every time like we spend time together. And so like I remember like we started praying, and my water broke in my bed, and I was like, oh, my water just broke, and like that was like a totally foreign sensation, like because nothing was happening. I wasn't in labor, and I was like, oh my gosh, what the heck? My bags were not packed. I'm a doula. I'm supposed to have my stuff packed at like 36 weeks. Nothing is packed. My mom is supposed to fly in like that Tuesday. It's like a Friday night. She's supposed to fly in to like be with our kids. I'm like, oh my gosh. So we're like not panicking, but like we're like doing a mad dash like around the house to like try to like figure things out at 11 p.m. I'm like go to bed that night, everything's like, packed. I finally go to bed. I have a horrible night's sleep because I'm like probably on adrenaline. But I'm like telling myself, okay, like you need to get rest because, things could happen and pick up. Well, I wake up and nothing's happening. I mean, I have like a little bit of cramping, but I'm like not really any contractions at all. This is Saturday morning. And so I know that like in the US, like you are put on a time clock like once your water breaks. Typically it's like recommended you have your baby within about 24 hours or so. And so I like make a mental note, okay, it happened at like 11 p.m. on Friday night. And so I go about my day. I tell my mom, I say, hey, like, is there any way you could change your flight? Because she lives in Florida, I'm in Georgia. My water broke last night, and she was thankfully able to fly in that day. So
Wow.
that was like a huge relief, just because like I knew our kids would be in good hands, in the event things pick up quickly, to take care of our boys. And so she comes in. I'm starting to have some contractions, but they're like super manageable and like very far apart. And so I go throughout my day on Saturday. I canceled all my plans. I remember I like went for a walk in our neighborhood to try to get things going. I was keeping an eye on like the water, so like it was clear. There was like no odor. I was taking like a high dose vitamin C, and just like monitoring like baby's movements and just making sure things were doing okay. But I felt really good to just continue to wait for labor to begin on its own. And this was like definitely like my most interesting birth, like
Mm.
in my opinion, like as a doula, just because like I felt like I learned so much from this experience. I have many clients whose water breaks before contractions start. And like I was never able to really understand like what that was like until this experience. And so, I feel like I'm really able to like empathize with them, like even more so now after going through it myself. And so I went about my day. I remember I like reached out to a friend of mine who's a midwife, and she gave me some advice. And ultimately just made the decision with my husband to just continue to wait on labor and to wait on like God's timing, because I just knew like I trusted my body. I like knew my body was gonna like do its thing when it was ready. I didn't want to have Pitocin. I didn't want to be induced or anything like that. And so yeah, I go to bed Saturday night like praying like I'll wake up in labor, and I don't wake up in labor. So it's Sunday morning. So now my water's been broken for like you do the math, since Friday night. And so I go to church because I need to keep my mind off things. I need a good distraction. And I was so thankful I went to church because I had all the women like pray over me and our baby, and it was just amazing. And at that point, like I was contracting, but I just still wasn't in active labor. They were just still like really irregular. So I go about my day, and I remember that morning I had been texting with a chiropractor friend, and I was like, is there any way like you could come adjust me? Because I thought maybe like maybe I'm like misaligned and I need like just a little bit of support. So I texted her, and she was able to come over that day around like 5 o'clock or so, or 6 o'clock. And so went throughout my day, still like super sporadic contractions. She comes over, and the minute she touches my right hip, she's like, your right hip is like all out of alignment. And I was like, oh, great. So she like does her thing. It takes her like 45 minutes. She does like reflexology on my feet. She does my whole spine. She does my neck. I can feel tingling like the whole time. Like she's like doing this adjustment. It was just like the most amazing thing ever. So she leaves by like 6:45. By 7 o'clock, I was telling my husband like whatever she did worked, because these are like active labor contractions, literally. That's how quickly it happened.
Wow.
The timing of this is gonna blow your mind. So 7:30 is when our kids normally go to bed. So I'm having like active labor contractions at this point. They are taking every single ounce of my attention and focus. I go in the shower because I'm just like I can't deal with like putting these kids to bed. So there, my mom is here putting the kids to bed. My husband's, I'm telling my husband like I think you should get like the car ready because I think we're gonna need to go like soon, very soon. And so he's like, putting everything in the car, getting it all ready to go, putting the car seat in. And so it takes every single like ounce of energy I have to like get my butt out of that shower to get in the car to go, because at that point I was in transition and I was like everything in me did not want to get into the car, but I got into the car and I told my husband, I was like, there is no way we're going to be in this car for 40 minutes to drive to our intended hospital.
Oh no.
We're going to the other one that's right down the street, because there's no way I'm making it. And thank God we did, because I was only at the hospital for 18 minutes
What?
before she was born. So it was the most intense car ride of my life. I highly do not recommend transition in the car. It is not fun. Um, but yeah, so from time of adjustment, 6 p.m., my baby was born at 8:18. So that just goes to show you the power of chiropractic care in an aligned body when it comes to labor and birth, because I am a believer in it now. Like if I wasn't before, I am such a believer in it now. But yeah, that was a crazy, crazy birth. I was able to birth her upright. I got into the hospital and they put me in a wheelchair because it was like kind of a far walk from like the parking lot to like the labor and delivery room.
Mhm.
And so I felt silly like sitting in a wheelchair, but like at the time I needed to get in there quickly. But then like I remember like getting up out of the chair and I was like, can somebody please catch my baby? Like the hospitalist like came in the room. She was amazing. And she like put on gloves and like literally caught her. Like it was like wild.
That's amazing. I love that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
And then we got our girl. Like, so that was really cool. My husband actually saw like the umbilical cord thinking it was a penis, and it was not. He said, "Oh, it's a boy," and I was like, "Oh, can we just double check?" And the hospitalist on call, she ended up being such a godsend. It's amazing. I ended up like I prayed for like so many specific things, and like I felt like she was such an answer to prayer. The midwife that was there, she was incredible. I can't say enough good things about her, but I remember her saying like, "Oh, that doesn't look like a boy to me," and I said, "Oh, that doesn't look like a boy to me either." It was so sweet. We just all like laughed and like cried, and it was amazing. So,
Wow.
and then my breastfeeding journey was so smooth with her. I mean, obviously, like there's a little bit of like, give or take in the beginning, but like I was so much more confident like the third time around, and I just again had all those right resources in place. And so yeah, I'm still nursing her. She's 10 months old now, and still going strong with breastfeeding. But yeah, those are my three births.
Amazing.
Very different, but
But all of them are so positive. Like,
yeah,
I'm gonna just call this podcast episode like positive. Just this is positivity. You
yeah.
want some positivity? Listen to this one because it's amazing. Like, I usually ask people like, what did you learn or what would you have done differently? But like, I mean, I'll ask you, would you have done anything differently?
Um, I feel like each of them was exactly what I needed. I I will say like if you can have a home birth like and avoid like involuntarily pushing in the car, I'd highly recommend that. Like that's not fun. That was not fun. I would have really preferred to like have that team come to me in that moment because like I said, it was just very challenging. Like getting out of that shower, I did not want to leave the water at all. Um, but I did what I had to do. Put on my big girl pants and did what I had to do. But yeah, no, I mean, I'm grateful for the experiences that I had. I mean, like I said, I prepared. Like I really did. I prepared not only like my body physically, but like my mind as well. Like for all three, I really strongly like felt so drawn to listening to like positive birth stories, like the ones that you share here on your podcast, Polina. And I really learned from like other women, like what to do, what worked for them, what didn't work for them. And so I really tried to like implement some of those things into my own experiences and found so much value in doing so. And so yeah, I don't know, I don't know if there's much else I would change besides like not going through transition in the car.
I mean, it's amazing. Your births sound amazing, you know. And the cool thing is they're all so different, you know, and which goes to show that a positive birth story also doesn't follow a script. It doesn't follow a pattern or some preset expectations. It's going to happen the way it happens, and no matter how it happens, it can be amazing and magical and beautiful. And I love it. I love it.
Absolutely.
Do
Yeah.
you have any advice? A pregnant mama is listening right now. What random piece of advice do you want to give her?
Hmm. Good question. So From my perspective, which is, like you mentioned, kind of unique because I am a doula, so I see quite a lot. Um, I would say be very, very careful who you decide to ask to be your care provider for your pregnancy and for your birth. Um, don't do what I did with my first. Don't just go on Google and find who takes your insurance and who's convenient to you right down the street. I would really encourage you to do research, ask around, ask in the Facebook groups, find out statistics, like find out what is, this care provider's, vaginal birth rate versus C-section rate. If you're going for a VBAC, find out what is their VBAC rate. Ask hard questions. And if you get any sort of inclination during that first initial appointment with them, during that first, face-to-face contact with them, find somebody else because your care provider is more than likely like the biggest determiner of like your birth outcome, like truly. And if you're not aligned with them on things like, whether or not they believe in like physiological birth or whether they're more like medically minded, like those are really like big decision points and things like most people care a lot about and so make sure you're aligned with them on those things. Make sure you're aligned with them on like the golden hour, things like breastfeeding, delayed cord clamping, because all of those things like at the end of the day like your care provider has a lot of like control over, and so if they don't align with you like in those things, find somebody else. Like that would be like my biggest advice because yeah, your care provider plays a huge role in the overall outcome.
I agree with that. And for people home birthing, I would also add to that from experience and from stories is also who you invite onto your birth team. Aside from the medical care providers, you mentioned the photographer that came in, right? How beautiful is that she added to your birth experience? A photographer, like it's just a photographer, but that person is entering this very sacred space as far as I'm concerned, whatever that space is in the physical realm, like if it's your home or if it's a birth center or if it's a hospital, your labor space is something to be protected. And so yes, your medical providers absolutely can make or break your experience, but also like if your mother-in-law bullied you into inviting her because she said you owe her or some, like whatever, like if there's some weird, not to use the term that the kids are using, but like if the vibes are wrong, like
Yeah.
if it makes you feel rattled, if it makes you feel stressed, if people ask me, they're like, should I have my kids at my birth or not? I'm like, that depends on you and your kid. I can't
Totally.
answer that for you. For some people it's peaceful and wonderful and serene. For other people, the idea of having their kid there stresses them out. So it's a matter of like protect your space, keep it calm, keep it serene, keep it peaceful, positive.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah, that would be my advice.
Amazing. So here we are. It's been an hour. Like I mentioned before we hit record, this always just flies by.
Yeah.
I'm so glad that I had you on. This was such a positive. I feel like so happy. Like this is so beautiful. Um,
Oh, yay.
before before we sign off here, do you want to shout out, your doula business, who you serve, where people can find you if they want to have you as their doula?
Oh, sure. Thank you. Yeah, so like Polina mentioned, I'm based in Atlanta, Georgia. So if you're local to this area, I would love to connect with you. I serve about a 45-minute radius of Lawrenceville specifically. I am most active on Instagram. I'm at Ann Morris ATL Doula, and then you can access like my website is in my bio. But I also serve clients virtually all over the world. I'm a virtual doula, and then I also teach childbirth education virtually as well. So if you're not local to Atlanta, I'd still love to connect with you and work with you. I just recently launched my first ever ebook. It's called My Empowered Pregnancy. So I just launched that. It's on Amazon, Etsy, and Shopify. So if you want to check that out, you
It's
can. That'd be great.
amazing. Yeah, so
Yeah.
I will put links into the description for all of those things. I'm going to pick up a copy of the book because I am addicted to all of these books about babies. These are just the ones I have on, physical copy. I have everything and
Yeah.
more on my Audible. So definitely go check that out. Thank you so much, Anne. I'm so glad to have had you on. I feel so like warm and fuzzy. This was such a beautiful episode.
Oh, yay. Thank you again for having me. I love talking all things birth, so this was really fun.
It was a pleasure. Thank you all for joining us, and I will see you guys in the next episode.